When I was 10 years old, my older sister and I decided to embark on a backyard camping adventure. Our parents' house sat adjacent to a vast field, and we possessed a generously sized tent. It was a warm summer evening, the perfect setting for our impromptu escapade. Our 2 cats were comfortably indoors, and our parents had graciously provided us with hot drinks before we settled in for the night. Underneath the canvas of our tent, we giggled and shared stories, basking in the novelty of sleeping outdoors. The night seemed ordinary as we drifted off to sleep. However, something peculiar occurred that would etch itself into our memories. In the wee hours of the morning, around 3 or 4 a.m., both my sister and I awoke, shivering from the cold. Inexplicably, we found ourselves peering out into the darkness outside the tent. It was then that my sister directed my attention to an anomaly in the field, asking if I could see it too. It took a moment, but eventually my eyes focused on the strange sight. There, in the dim pre-dawn light, stood a figure, roughly 6 to 8 feet tall. It appeared to emit a faint, eerie white glow, and it was moving swiftly across the field, almost as if it were galloping. As I strained my eyes to comprehend what I was witnessing, I realized that the figure was completely silent. No sound of footsteps or rustling grass accompanied its movements. My sister and I exchanged terrified glances, our young minds struggling to process this inexplicable sight. Fear surged within us, and we abandoned our campsite in a frantic rush. With hearts pounding, we darted inside through the back door of our house, leaving the enigmatic figure behind in the darkness. In the days that followed, I asked my sister about that eerie encounter, hoping for an explanation that would soothe my unease. However, to my bewilderment, she dismissed the entire incident, insisting that what we had seen was nothing more than our 2 cats playing in the field. I knew this couldn't be the case. I vividly remembered seeing both of our cats sound asleep inside the house when we had fled in terror. The memory of that silent, glowing figure still haunts me to this day. A mysterious and unexplained occurrence from my childhood that defies rational explanation.
When I was 13 years old, something rather perplexing happened. It was a seemingly normal evening, with my parents inviting over our former neighbours for a casual visit. These neighbours had been our co-residents in the same block of flats until I was 5. On that night, I was snug in my bed, but the walls were thin, and the murmurs of adult conversations reached my ears. The discussion took an unexpected turn when Mrs. Reynolds remarked, "It's the strangest thing, Jane. The new family that's moved in above us, their young son says he feels someone in his room at times, just like Sarah used to." I froze. What was she talking about? I had no recollection of any such experiences. The next morning, consumed by a mix of curiosity and unease, I approached my mother about it. Her expression changed to one of subtle surprise. "Oh, I thought we'd never spoken about it since you never brought it up," she replied. "There were some odd occurrences, but we didn't want to alarm you." She began detailing the series of strange happenings I had apparently experienced in that old apartment. The first and most recurring episode was my claims of footsteps in my room during the night. My parents would rush in to find me looking scared, but the room would always be empty. Objects related to me would mysteriously vanish, toys, books, and even my clothes. They would later be found in bizarre places. My teddy bear once turned up inside the kitchen oven, and my storybook on a high shelf no child could reach. The most chilling incident, however, was one night when my mother was awakened by the sound of a lullaby. Following the music, she found my old record player in my room spinning a nursery rhyme, though no one had turned it on. She remembered the icy chill in the room, the eerie quietness, and her own racing heart. Believing it might be a technical glitch, she reached out to turn it off. But as she did, the record began to slow down, distorting the once familiar tune into a creepy, mournful dirge. Unable to bear the eeriness any longer, she had exclaimed, "Please, let her be." Almost immediately, the record stopped, plunging the room into silence. She concluded her tale, stating that after that night, everything returned to normal. The mysterious footsteps, the disappearing objects, and the haunting lullaby ceased altogether. They never mentioned it to me, thinking I'd forget, and I did. Although I had grown skeptical over the years, hearing this account from my own past shook me. It was easy to dismiss such stories as figments of one's imagination when they belonged to someone else, but now it was personal. A decade later, my skepticism would be further challenged. A colleague at work mentioned living in my old block of flats, and how his daughter complained of footsteps and her belongings shifting places. I couldn't help but wonder if it was merely a coincidence, or if there truly was something beyond our understanding that had left its mark on that old apartment.
Growing up, I was absolutely mesmerized by the night. I mean, there's just something cool about how everything looks and sounds when the sun goes down, right? It's like the world takes a deep breath, cars slowly quiet down in the distance, the crickets start their concerts, and the streetlights kick on, giving everything this soft glow. My family's house was in this chill suburban area. Think about the kind of place where every home has a nice lawn, big trees, and you can easily borrow a cup of sugar from your next-door neighbor because everyone knows everyone. Sounds boring to some, but for me, it was home, and I wouldn't trade those memories for anything. Weekends were a little special. School nights, early bedtime, no questions asked, but weekends? That was a different story. Mom and Dad let me stay up late, probably because they remembered how fun it was to be a kid with no bedtime. I'd plop down on our super comfortable couch, and with the TV's soft glow, I'd watch my favorite shows, diving headfirst into all those stories until my eyes got heavy. But there was this one night I'll never forget. It was one of those nights where the only thing you could hear was, well, nothing. It was super quiet. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I heard our old porch swing squeaking. It sounded like someone was using it. At first, I thought it might be the wind or a cat, but something inside told me to check. So, sneaking over to the window, I took a quick look. And, man, what I saw gave me the creeps. An older woman, perhaps in her late 50s or early 60s, was seated on our swing. Her unkempt hair framed a face marked with lines of worry and fatigue. The pale, almost ghostly hue of her nightgown contrasted sharply with the dark night around her. What was she doing here? I freaked out, like 0 to 60 in a second. I bolted to my parents' room, trying to get words out, but it was just a jumbled mess. My dad, trying to calm me down, thought maybe my imagination was running wild, thanks to all those late-night shows. To show me there was nothing to be scared of, he went to check. But as he opened the door, his face went all serious. Yup, the lady was really there, looking right at us. He quickly shut and locked the door and told my mom to dial 911. Those minutes waiting for the cops felt like hours. When they finally showed up, they spoke to the lady. From what we could hear, she kept talking about some trouble with her husband. Later on, through the local grapevine and the police, we pieced together her story. She had some mental health struggles and had some sort of big fight with her family that evening. She probably just wandered over to our house without really knowing why. But that incident, it changed things for me. The living room wasn't just the cozy TV spot anymore. At night, I'd sometimes get jumpy, straining my ears for any odd noise. It taught me that sometimes even familiar places can throw curveballs your way. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? We think we know everything about the places and people around us, but what other stories and secrets are out there, just waiting to be discovered?